of the markets. So we've covered all these different markets, but what you need to be looking at is the left-hand side here. So these are the new emerging sort of high-growth markets. So again, electric vehicle fluids is one of the areas where we see as being a high-growth area, and you can sort of delve. If anyone wants a demo of this database, just email me, and I can take you through it. So electric vehicles we see as a major growing market. The numbers have been much higher in the past. I'll go on to that a little bit in a minute. Coming down, but still, 15 or high teens growth in the electric vehicles market. The electric vehicle e-fluids market is actually growing slightly higher than the electric vehicle markets itself, because more fluids and lubricants are being specifically designed for those vehicles, and originally those vehicles were just using standard lubricants and greases within those, and now we've got specialist e-fluids going into the market. So the growth is slightly higher than the electric vehicle market growth. We see immersion cooling fluids and also food-grade lubricants as well growing in the markets. So we see a big difference in growth. This is the global passenger vehicle growth, and it's kind of stagnated around 60 million units. There was a point in time where the automotive industry thought we were going to get to 100 million units, but it looks like that's flattened off around 60 million units. And really what we need to be looking at here is where is the share within that 60 million? Is it EVs? Which geographies are they going to be in? And we see big growth coming from Asia, particularly China here, India. You can see all the data on there. We've seen North America really struggling, and obviously Europe, as you no doubt know, is quite flat as well in terms of vehicle sales as well. So just looking at the middle chart here, this is the growth of the electric passenger vehicle market. We used to see, huge, crazy numbers for the growth of the EV market, sort of 100% year-on-year growth. That has really come down. I've even heard some journalists talk about, a collapse in the electric vehicle market. That isn't quite true. There's been a collapse in the growth, but even still, the growth is still pretty good. So we're still seeing double-digit growth in the passenger vehicle market. What happens in the future is quite tricky. Everyone who has an electric vehicle, that wanted an electric vehicle, that can afford an electric vehicle, now has an electric vehicle. The challenge now is to get the mainstream population into electric vehicles if we're going to grow the e-fluids market. This is going to be particularly challenging in the US, and there's a big question mark about what happens to that market depending on the result of the US election. So we're working on scenarios for that, for understanding, what is the opportunities for e-fluids in the US and some of these other regions, depending on what happens there. We track the market for different types of electric vehicles, lots of different opportunities for greases, e-fluids, cooling fluids within those different vehicles. And as I mentioned before, passenger vehicles is going to be one of the major areas, but we also see a lot of growth in things like off-highway vehicles, commercial vehicles, e-buses as well is a major area for fluids and lubricants potential. So that was, I had 5 minutes, just wanted to set the scene. If you've got any questions for me afterwards, feel free to email me, or if you want a copy of the presentation, do let me know. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Robert. I think that really kind of sets the scene really well with a very good high-level overview of kind of where the industry's at. Now, to get a little bit more into the weeds, and for an additive company perspective, our next speaker is Philippe Yannick, who's the Vice President for Commercial at Afton Chemical. He's got a wealth of experience, so more than 20 years. I hope that doesn't date you too much. And has been with Afton since 2006 with a lot of experience in automotive additives. So next up, Philippe.
Thank you, Raf. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure for me to be here at Lubricants Expo for this session, and especially as we talk about value creation. Throughout my time at Afton, in marketing, in business management, I've always been very passionate about value creation. So I'm going to share some thought with you today, as I'm convinced that this industry has quite a lot more to do in terms of delivering value and deploying value to end users. So I'm going to start with, setting the scene with a few perspectives of where the world is going, starting with demand. And we all have, views on demand, models to predict the future based on park, based on policies, based on other macro factors. But when we look at demand on that top left graph, taking a quite aggressive view on electrification, we should expect that the demand in automotive lubricant should peak roughly in the middle of the next decade. But actually, this is going to be impacted by two main factors. What's going to impact most demand is actually efficiencies. So our ability to deliver longer ordering interval, but as well the pace of implementation of these longer ordering intervals. On the contrary, when it comes to policies on impact on electrifications, just to build a bit on what the comment Robert made, we start to see a bit of a changes, a shift. The timing is stretching out. What actually is very interesting is with OEMs, we're starting to hear really a change of the narrative, where all the focus was around, obviously, legislation, which is still very important now, but really the narrative now is really around consumer needs and wants, and the recognition that actually ICE engines are needed in many parts of the world and will be needed and asked by end user for a long time. When it comes to the product mix, the big change we're going to see then consequently in the next 20 years is actually not traditional technology to e-technology, meaning by that e-axle or ETF and things like that. The big shift for which we need to be prepared is the transition from PV to CV. As an illustration, if you look from an additive demand standpoint, by 2040, the demand for e-axle is roughly going to be twice the size of wind turbine. So that's remain for us a big niche. But that transition to CV will have a lot of impact on us and on the value we need to deliver in the market. Our business is going to become more B to B to B to B to B throughout the whole value chain. The importance of brands compared to the importance of services will be put in balance. And just as a thought, if I ask you, what is there in common in a commercial vehicle segment between, say, a large industrial farm in the US, a council fleet in UK, a mine in Africa, or a driver owner in India? Well, I can bet that all of these users, operators, will somehow buy an API CI for oil to cater for their needs. But what defines them and defines their needs is not the fact they buy an API CI for oil. It's about their need, the need of the servicing the needs, and all the other aspects around the lubricant, and as well the type of performance they need on the lubricant despite this common framework and specification. So the challenge for us is really to adapt to this growing need in commercial vehicle to deliver the right products. The last big change we're going to see in the next 20 years is from a territory and geography standpoint. If the last 20 years have been a transition from west to east, the next 20 years will be transition from north to south. If you draw a line roughly from the north of Mexico to the north of Africa, everything below this line is going to grow roughly by 1% CAGR in the next 20 years, with all the territories in the north actually declining in demand. So that will have a huge application on our business. The center of gravity of our business is changing. The application is obviously around the needs, different needs from different users, but as well a huge implication from our supply chain, our raw material sourcing standpoint, supply chain standpoint, and manufacturing, obviously. And as an industry, we need to adapt to that. So with this in mind, our industry has been, is, and will continue to be part of the solution when it comes to make the world a better place. our industry is helping reducing emissions, reducing waste, increasing fuel economy. So I'm sure I'm pushing open doors here, making this comment here in front of you today. But what I'm convinced about here is that we've barely scratched the surface in terms of our ability to deploy the value of our technology in the market and extracting the value for this industry. Just as an anecdote, I was involved a few years ago in a focus group talking to operators who were facing harsh conditions. And what's quite really striking from listening to these people is that in the face of harsh conditions, with no exception, the operators were either compromising on the operating condition of the equipment or were reducing significantly the drain interval on the maintenance to adapt to this environment. In no cases, they were actually choosing to use a high-quality lubricants to address this issue. It just, for me, illustrates the way and the opportunity we still have ahead of us to actually deploy and make this technology more prevalent in the market to really impact the environment and make the world better for all of us. So just another good example about that is how high-quality lubricants can support and help the total cost of ownership for fleets. So here it's a picture. It's of the cost of running a fleet in Europe, which is broken down by the labor cost, toll, depreciation, fixed and variable cost, and fuels. And it may be a bit too small on the slide for you to see here, but just in the middle here, it's the cost in relation to the overall cost of high-quality lubricants. So we know that using this technology can improve, fuel economy, which brings some benefit for the fleet user. Can help as well reducing, the maintenance cost. But there's as well an area that we're not necessarily talking about too much, which is about depreciation. And actually, the constant use of better lubricant can actually help, having the trucks better looked after and command, a higher resale value for the trucks, building a reputation for these fleets who have the right habits. Altogether, looking at the combination of all these factors, we can get actually a return of, the fleet can get a return of 1,000% on the investment in a high-quality lubricant. But you all know, and we all know, that not all fleets are today using high-quality lubricants. It just illustrates today the opportunity in front of us to get this technology more embedded in the market. My last thought here and last comment is around, it's all good to try to focus on the value and delivering good value in the market, but we are facing actually some challenges around a lot of additional work that we're facing that comes a bit as a distraction for delivering value in the market and through innovation. So the graph here shows it's an example of often how our cost or R&D investment have increased significantly just to stay in business. And I'm pretty sure that pictures will be very similar to Pierre's company here, around here. And this is due to the fact that there's more and more pressure on compliance around EHS requirements, more and more need for spec upgrade with actually no value added for the end users, spec proliferation, as well all the challenge we have around global sourcing overall. So this is really a burden for our industry. And what I'm asking here and I'm offering to the industry is we really need to be more pragmatic in terms of how we address these challenges so we can really focus on the true innovation that really brings tangible value for the end user rather than the stay in business environment. And actually, when I look at this panel, there's 600 years here of expertise in the lubricant industry altogether. And I think we can do a better job altogether to be more pragmatic so that our investments are really going to innovation and value for end users. And I will leave you on the gong on one last thought is something that's always amazed me in this industry is we're spending billions to develop engine tests, bench tests, to try to replicate the real world. Where in this modern world, actually, most of the data are available at any point in time in the vehicles on the road. And I think I want to leave that thought with you. There's probably a different ways we can approach value creation, product development for the benefit of end users. Thank you. That was all I have for you. I'm looking forward to hearing for your questions a bit later. Thank you.
Thank you, Philippe. That was a really enlightening deep dive into some of the kind of dynamics behind our industry. I think my takeaways was some of that development of going to a B2B to B to B to B model, as well as seeing how kind of the differences in global demand in the future was going to shape some of the supply chain challenges as well. I think the number that sort of jumped out on the screen was that 1,000% ROI. You know, when everyone is struggling in their investment portfolio to get 10% out of the S&P 500, that's something that makes people sit up and take notice. All right, so our next panelist is Sander van Donk, who's the Vice President for Europe at Lubrizol. He's had a very extinguished career across a number of different companies, including Sulzer, Neste, Total Energies as well, and now finds himself at Lubrizol with 20 years of international experience across a lot of different B2B enterprises. So he's also the only male member of our panel today who did not opt for a buzz cut, so that makes him a little bit different to the rest of us. So, Sander, could you please come up and give us a whirl?
Thank you, Rafe. Good morning, everyone. So, like Rafe said, my name is Sander van Donk. I joined Lubrizol actually beginning of this year as a vice president. So, Philippe, you said 600 years of experience in the panel? How old do you think I am? So, yes, but for sure, a lot of experience in the lubricant sector. I won't contribute much to it because I don't have that much experience in the lubricant sector. But for sure, very pleased to be here, meet many old friends since I worked a couple of years in Neste and have been meeting many people at that point in time in the lubricant sector. So it's nice to see some familiar faces, but I'm also particularly looking forward to meet many new faces here in the crowd. So yeah, great event. I think the amount of people that are here shows how people appreciate these type of meetings. So it's great to be here. And what I want to do is I want to actually just briefly talk a little bit about the challenges that we are facing in the industry. So I will briefly touch upon the market needs and then show what we are doing as an industry to continue to innovate and respond to these market needs. And then we'll try to in the last slide go a little bit on how Lubrizol can help you enable success. But I think in this panel, I also just want to speak for the entire industry, how the industry is trying to continue to enable success in an environment in Europe which we are facing is quite soft and quite challenging sometimes, and it's not always made easy for the industry to continue to be successful in the European climate. So and we'll touch briefly on that as well. So so if you look at the demands that we have in the industry, right? We of course we have the Euro 7 upon us, right? So the strictest set of regulations that is going to be rolled out for the automotive industry, and will for sure dictate and is dictating many of the new products that we are launching in the industry and that our competitors are launching in the market as well. So and many of you know what we're doing in this industry. So of course that will help, like Philippe was already saying, right? It will help for sure to continue to be more sustainable, to drive cleaner practices in the industry and on the road. So so that's what we're working on a lot. We have, of course, the ban of the internal combustion engine by 2035 in Europe, which will impact the industry to quite a bit. We see, of course, many EVs already on the roads today. Tesla was mentioned just before in one of the slides. So, and that will impact the industry by quite a bit as well. But in the same time, what we do have to realize as well is that the internal combustion engine is there for quite a while still, right? We will still have probably 40, 50 years at least of internal combustion engines on the roads, with the car park that is there today, with the many cars that are still being sold also. So that means that we as a lubricant industry cannot sit still, right? We need to continue to innovate. We need to continue to bring products to the market to make sure that the emissions are as low as possible for the internal combustion engine as well. And I think a particular thing for Europe are the REACH regulations. We didn't talk about it really yet so far, but I do think that we have to appreciate the fact that that REACH regulations in Europe and the regulatory environment in general in Europe is posing a lot of challenges for us, talking for Lubrizol, but I know that in the debrief that we had ahead of the conference, that it's very much the same for the peer companies that are working here. It poses a lot of challenges to the industry, and it means that we have to continue, of course, to innovate continually, but also in the same time work on advocacy to make sure that we are educating some of our policymakers in the chemistry we're trying to bring to the market. So yeah, if we then look at the innovation that we are bringing, like I said, we are bringing, of course, the is this the next slide actually? Yeah. So yeah, we're bringing innovative low SEPs technologies to the market as we speak, to help actually the components that are there nowadays in the cars for after treatment to continue to perform well, to have a long-lasting life. I think that's particularly important. And of course, with the move from ICE cars to EVs, we're also setting ourselves up in that area. We are already very active in liquids for electric vehicles. And we see that, and we could also see from the Markets and Markets presentation that is, of course, an area that will continue to develop, even if it is, like you said, right, it's sort of a larger niche probably to play in, and the amount of fluids that goes into an electrical car is significantly lower, of course, than there goes into a nice car. So, but having said that, of course, it's a very important area for development and growth as well. And I think that if we look into the REACH regulations, that continues to, for Lubrizol at least, to continue to be on the top of our game, because we don't know how the regulatory environment will continue in Europe. And I think this is one of the big unknowns. This is one of the big challenges that we have. Having regulation that is not always clear makes that we have to invest, and my colleague from Afton already mentioned that, right? That means that we have to continue to invest in new chemistries, new technologies. We need to set ourselves up for future success, but it's not always evident if regulation is not clear and you don't know which molecules you can continue to use tomorrow or after tomorrow. And in the same time, you also know that actually many of these molecules are not harmful in any way, but some of the policymakers think that they're harmful. So on one hand, we work on advocacy and we make sure that people understand the chemistries behind our business. But in the same time also, we're very much working on alternatives and make sure that we continue to be successful in the industry. So, and of course, I mean, we're there to enable success with you, right? Many of our partners, whether it is OEMs, whether it is the lubricant and oil marketers, we really want to partner and drive success together. So, and I think that's what we have been doing in this industry. One of the things that I like, being not a veteran in this industry particularly, is the industry structure and the relationship building, right, between the different parts in the industry. And sometimes it's also, to some extent, a little bit special how the industry structure works and how different partners play together. But I think it's one of the charms of this particular industry. And yeah, I look forward to continue to be successful with Lubrizol and with many of our partners in this industry. I think one of the topics of the session as well in the description was the brain drain. So apart from saying that, of course, we're looking forward as Lubrizol to continue to drive success together. I think also particularly for Europe, there's always a challenge in finding good people. So I just want to finalize with an invitation, right? If you're interested to add brain power to Lubrizol, please reach out, right? So, and with that, looking forward to the panel discussion.
Thanks so much, Sander. Yeah, it's always interesting to see these discussions around things like Euro 7, bans on internal combustion engines, REACH regulations. I mean, in my part of the world, all three of these things don't exist. But you know, you really get a sense when you're in Europe that a lot of the regulation here kind of drives the technology forward, and you know, in the other parts of the world, we are the recipients of a lot of that development. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the future. All right, our fourth panellist is Chris Locke, who's the EVP for Sustainable Transportation at Infineum. He's got over 30 years of experience and has held a number of different positions within Infineum, including Chief Strategy Officer, EVP of Supply, Marketing, Technology, Business Manager for Lubricants and Fuels Additives. So with a wealth of experience, welcome Chris Locke to the panel.
Thank you, Raf. First challenge is to navigate the stage, which has been successfully achieved. Well, first of all, I'd just like to thank Raf and the rest of the organising committee for the opportunity to speak, along with the very eminent speakers on the stage. It's a great privilege. So 5 minutes to talk about value creation in the lubricants industry is quite a formidable task. And I think one of the benefits of being on the stage with speakers who are at different parts of the value chain is a lot of those topics that I think we all see in a common way have been covered very comprehensively by both Philippe and Sander. So what I'd like to do is to actually build on some of those comments, but also maybe put some nuance onto other topics that we see as challenges that we collectively have to face as a lubricants industry. I joined the industry 30 years ago, as Raf said. Now, the danger of being a sort of industry veteran is you can get very boring over time and talk about the past. But on the counter side, you can look at the history and see what has worked well and maybe less well over time. And I honestly believe that at this point in time, we're at an industry inflection point. By that I mean what has served us well as an industry for the last 30, maybe 50 years, is something we've all got to be very, very careful of assuming will make us successful in the future. And I believe this is an industry issue, not just an individual company issue. We can think about the energy transition. We heard from Rob about that. Sustainability, specification evolution, regulatory changes, digitalisation, deglobalisation, talent. All these different topics are all at points of inflection. And if we don't get it right as an industry, that's going to cause problems for the future. I believe the challenge that all of us should put to ourselves is why will this meeting room be filled 20 years, 30 years from now with the talent who are driving the business forward and full of that innovation and creation that you heard about from the previous speakers. So let me just go into a little bit more detail on one or two points. And as I said, I'll do my best not to repeat what's been said by the previous speakers. Let's start with the energy transition. I believe passionately that the energy transition is the right thing to do. Now, it creates challenges for the lubricants industry. As you just heard from Sander, the volume of lubricant used in an electric vehicle is substantially less than that used by an internal combustion engine. But we should also recognise that, number one, there is a lot of innovation in the electric area, e-mobility fluids, coolants, all the topics you heard about from some of the previous speakers. But I would also say that the energy transition is not a simple one-directional chain from the internal combustion engine to the lithium-ion battery. For sure, that's going to be part of the mix, but many, many other elements are also extremely relevant. We've got fuel economy. Again, you heard from Philippe about the value that a lubricant can bring to the total operating cost of a vehicle. You can think about extended drain. The bulk of carbon emissions from making a lubricant are at the point of creation and the point of burning. So if you can extend the drain interval, that dramatically reduces the carbon footprint. We've got the hybrid, the plug-in hybrid, growing at 70–80% in various large markets around the world. We've got alternative fuels, methanol, ammonia, particularly in large engine. We've got biocircularity, we've got re-refined base stocks. There are so many different elements. And I think as an industry we need to embrace the fact that value creation is based around recognising all of those different powertrains, those nuanced powertrains, and making sure we lubricate them and ensure the durability of that hardware going into the future. I passionately believe we have a long and sustainable future as a business. Let's talk about sustainability. Now, on sustainability, most people talk about sustainability in the environmental aspect, and of course that's a major part of it, carbon reduction. But it's not the only part. There are 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals covering a whole range of different topics. And I believe a big part of our obligation as an industry is to be a model for what all of those UN SDG goals look like for an industry. I'll come back to this when I talk about talent later, because I believe we need to make sure that we are an attractive proposition for future graduates coming into the industry. We need to make sure we have the right high quality, high capability talent. I would also say that if you look at sustainability, we know what to do today. We can already reduce the carbon footprint of a lubricant dramatically, over 90%, by bringing in biocircular raw materials, plant optimization, re-refined base stocks. There are so many different elements that we can bring to bear. But there are challenges in passing that cost into the market. We need to make sure that that value is recognised, is understood, and is brought through. I strongly believe that there is real value in the industry and the sustainability axis, but we need to collectively work to sell that value on into the market. One topic that's not been discussed by the previous speakers is digitisation. We live in a digital world where all of us use digital tools day in, day out. But as an industry, we are still pretty immature in terms of the application of digital technologies. Even simple things like track and trace are not widely deployed. But start to think about things like manufacturing optimization. Think about advanced analytics, machine learning, AI. There are so many tools that we can bring to bear to many, many different parts of our industry. Touchless orders to cash, purchase to pay, all tools which are widely deployed in other industries are still relatively immature, but they bring efficiency. And to pick up on what Philippe said earlier, we owe it to ourselves as an industry to take every single dollar of cost out that's not required. That's what's going to help us to be sustainable for the future. And the last topic I'd like to pick up on is talent, because this is something I feel very, very passionate about. And I hear it widely discussed in the industry, but not always on platforms such as this. I really believe that as a collective industry, we owe it to ourselves to make sure that the future talent for this business understands what they can bring, the fact it's an exciting, an innovative, a creative industry, and an area that they can bring still enormous value. I was talking to a new graduate not so long ago, very capable person, and they said to me something that really struck me. They said, "Am I on the wrong side of history?" I mean, I find that a terrible phrase to hear from somebody coming into the industry. This is an industry we can bring enormous value. The world needs transportation. It's brought enormous good. It's driven GDP growth. It's lifted millions, billions of people out of poverty. It's driven global trade. It's brought tourism. It's brought personal mobility. But we need to make sure that the future of transportation is more environmentally acceptable than in the past. I believe we can do that. I believe that's where the core of value creation for the future is. And I encourage all of us to work together to achieve that. Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much, Chris, for those words. I think it's an interesting, the talent acquisition part is a really interesting piece in our industry. Apropos of nothing, at STLE a couple of years ago, I did a bit of a straw poll of about 80 people, asking them how they ended up in the industry. And it broke out about 80-20. 20% of people come into the business because it's a family business, and the other 80% are here by accident. Right? They're not here. No one grows up wanting to become a lubrication engineer. So it's definitely on us to help promote the industry a little bit more. The other reason I like these introductory sessions is because they kind of act as a bit of a North Star for the rest of the conference. And actually a bunch of the different things which are touched on there, the idea of scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions and how we go about calculating those. That's actually going to be in a session later on today. The idea of all these alternate fuels that are coming to the market, re-refined base oils. We actually have a lot of sessions that touch on all those topics a little bit later. So make sure you kind of stay active for those. All right, our next panelist is Dr. Matthew Boulande. I don't think I pronounced that correctly, but Vice President for Industrial in Europe, but also the Managing Director for Castrol Germany. He comes with a wealth of experience with 20 years across a bunch of the majors in the lubricants industry. And yeah, Matthew, please come to the stage.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Rafi. Hello, everyone. I will actually follow Chris' mantra and try my best to be additive, jokes apart, guy, in opposition of being repetitive. Okay. But basically, to keep it very simple, I have three messages, only three things to tell you. Okay, three key messages I would like to lend, and I will just start with a bit of context. Taking the point of view of the Finnish lubricants maker, and Petra will follow me and have the same point of view afterwards. So, Robert, Philip, Sander, Chris, you shared a lot of stuff about the market, the opportunities, the way you look at it from your point of view. I think our point of view is actually very similar, but let's come a little closer to the end customer and understand how we can play with the customer centricity mindset as much as I can. So just one slide of context before I laid out the three key messages I would like to share with you. One of the first elements is that there are a certain number of facts that we need to embrace. The transition to Industry 2.0, as it was a few decades ago, the origin of automation, the transition to 3.0, the 4.0, which is a little bit the one we are living as we speak, and the digital revolution that Chris was mentioning, and the transition that is upcoming to 5.0 with IA or with whatever machine learning we could embrace into manufacturing processes. It is shaping completely differently the way the manufacturing industry will see, design, perform their activity for the world. And we need to embrace it because it has multiple impacts on our industry from a finished lubricant standpoint, from the way we offer products to the industry, as well as from the way lubricants are used or not used. Okay? If you think of additive manufacturing, 3D printing as an example. Second part, automation versus cost of labor. I think this debate has been discussed more or less in every country of the world, including today China or what were 20 years back cheap labor countries. This is touching everyone. Now the question is, first of all, a robot is using lubricants or greases, whatever form of lubricants, okay, and that could be a good news for all of us. But second of all, there are still a mindset behind it. There is a mindset around reliability of the asset. There is a mindset around reliability of human being versus what a machine could bring. There is a mindset around efficiency. There is a mindset around cost of productivity overall. And that's a big and a massive change for all of us to bear in mind. The third element, efficiency, process optimization. Allow me to skip that one. You are all aware of it. I think my peers talked about it. Actually, all of you guys are offering products. You are working on efficiency. Process optimization of our customers are something that has happened for ages, TCO or whatever aspect might come, that will remain key in our industry. If we can do things better, if we can optimize processes, I think this trend will never end. The one before last, circularity and sustainability. And what I just want to share, to be additive to what Chris was mentioning, is that this could reshape completely the way we look at our industry. Circularity and sustainability touches the lubricant industry itself. It touches as well the end user of the lubricants industry. Circularity in any way, okay, whether it is for lubes or whether it is for the different materials they are using. Sustainability, as Chris said, takes many different, can be perceived in many different ways, okay? And that is disrupting many things. It is having an impact on the additive. It is having an impact on the base oils we are using. It is having an impact on the carbon footprint. It is having an impact on supply chain decisions, okay? Because obviously, when you are creating a circular system, you can bring the product once to a customer in a position to bringing it every other week. Okay, and when you do that, you are changing completely the number of truck in flow, trains in flow, shipping industry might be disrupted, you name it. And the last point I will make, coming closer to the industrial world, is waste. Waste is becoming a big topic. It has been for a long time for everyone manufacturing things, but with regulation coming on top, with certain waste and disposal becoming costly or becoming regulated and having to be dealt in a certain manner, we have also a role to play, either by ensuring we create less waste or by actually offering solutions to manage waste, or ensuring that waste are less hazardous or that waste can be renewed, regenerated, or reused in a way or another. And now let me come to the 3 key messages I would like to land with you. And the first one, I think some of you guys, you spoke about it, and that's actually something that is very high on my mind, something that I'm worried about, okay? And I see a lot of young faces in the room. I've seen some young people around, and that's brilliant, that's fantastic. But there is one clear element around talent for our industry that is key. And actually, it's on us. It's on us to ensure that we can make our sector attractive to the young people, to make sure that actually they want to become a lubrication engineer, because that can be a dream to go on Mars or whatever is the ultimate dream, Rafe, that you had when you were a young boy, okay? And actually, the talent, it's twofold. First of all, we need to attract talent, okay? And here we compete with maybe the chemical industry, maybe other industry, the food industry, or sustainable businesses at large. We need to attract talent. We need to give a purpose to people. Why would you come to the lubricant industry world? Because we can make a difference, because we can help the world get to the energy transition faster, better, because we can create a better future, a more sustainable one. At least we need to be able to articulate the purpose. It looks like the new generation is looking for one. Let's take it on us to ensure we have one to tell them. The other part is talent retention, okay? You know, about 600 years, I don't know how you came to 600, but oh, you did, Philip, but I think, yeah, well, why not? 600, thousands, millions of people have stayed in this industry for decades. Not entirely sure the new generation will do that. How do we ensure we keep talents? And I'm talking about talent for the industry. If someone is moving from one company to the other, he or she is building our experience. That's fine. I'm happy with that. But at least this industry deserves expertise. It takes time to build it. Okay? Talent is a big problem. We need to be attractive. We need to retain the best talent possible in order to be able to deliver on this heavy roadmap we have in front of us to help the manufacturing industry get better. That's my first message. Talent. And it's on us. It's not about the young generation being attracted by us. It's about us being attractive for them. My second message, and apologies if I will be a little bit provocative, but it's supply chain, okay? I'm one of these people who is annoyed by hearing that we have a supply chain problem. I don't think our customers care. The lubricants industry has a supply chain issues. Globalization, wars around the world, resilience of the supply chain, local manufacturing, diversity of sources, problems with raw materials, primary materials, regulations, classifications that are making our life complex. Sorry to say, guys, for all of us in the industry, that's our problem. I don't think we should make that public. I think it's an industry problem. Let's embrace it, let's fix it. Resilience is important, yes. You know what, at the end of the day, we need to deliver our product in time, at the right location, at the right price, and we have to take ownership of this. We cannot complain that supply chain is messed up, that the sources are not there, that shipping is all over the place, and Red Sea is problematic, that we don't have source to this, so we need to change chemicals there, that the rules are too strict, or that we can't put anything in our metalworking fluids any longer, okay? That's a fact. If we're not happy about it, we are the industry, let's change it. If we are willing to embrace it, I think we're going to fix it faster, and we're going to bring a good solution to it. So my second message, supply chain, heavy challenge, lots of opportunities. You can also elude that circularity, sustainability is a huge opportunity to reshape supply chain, to make it more resilient, to bring product close to the customer and refilter on site or reuse on site or look at it differently. That's my second message. First one, talent. Second one, supply chain. Let's own it. And my third message is about the role we play. I think if we get that question right, if we get the answer to that question right, the rest will be easy to go. The real question for me is, how important are we for the industry? When we talk to, and maybe some of you are from, I don't know, bearing companies, when we talk to a steel maker, when we talk to a wind operator, when we talk to a cement maker, how important is lubricants in his mind? And how much we believe lubricant is important in reality? Can we help a steel maker making carbon-free steel? Can we help him manage his waste better? Can we help him making his life easier or reach his sustainability goals? I believe we can, right? And I think we need to take ownership of that question so that we have the right answer, so that we are cracking on, entering and helping the world get better. That's it. Very simple message. Talent, supply chain, let's take ownership and let's ensure we have an answer as to the role we play to help the world get there. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Matthew, and thank you also for mentioning the challenge of circularity. I do most of my work with end users, and they're all crying out for circular solutions, but they're a bit confused as to how do they implement it. What's the technology required, whether it's filtration or even whether it's a different business model that's required entirely. So thank you for mentioning that. Our final panelist is Petra Matzart, who's the Managing Director of Lubricants at Shell here in Germany. She began her career at Shell in Hamburg in 2006 and has had various positions across Switzerland, Austria and Italy. And so with a wealth of experience, to round us out, Petra, could you please come up?
Thank you, Rafi, and thank you for having me here, for inviting me. I'm very happy to bring a bit of diversity to the stage. On one hand, from the very obvious male-female piece, but probably also a bit around age and maybe a bit around experience in lubricants. Because to be honest, I can't really contribute a lot to the 600 years in lubricants. I just joined lubricants a few months ago, but indeed already quite a bit in the wider energy industry as such with Shell. So thanks a lot for setting the scene with all the challenges and the changes we see in our industry, in the wider economy and everything. I would like to bring a bit of a different viewpoint now, also to release you into these few days of discussions and hopefully inspiration between one and the other to find solutions for these challenges we have here. Because ultimately each challenge, hopefully, brings also an option for an opportunity, right? So ideally we turn it into this optimistic way of seeing a challenge as an opportunity to innovate and create something new. Because as some of my pre-speakers clearly said, the way we've done or we've acted in our industry before might not be the right way to continue. So I would like to think about or bring your thoughts a bit towards a kind of future portfolio. And but just to go one more back to this whole energy transition trilemma we are in. Right, so we have these different and many more than these three topics, but there's a lot around this energy security for our customers, for their business, for their industry, and energy security in our case for lubricant solutions does also mean kind of really the product security, right? That it is there in time. We talked about supply chain issues, etc. The other bit then, of course, a really important piece is around the sustainable solutions, right? We need sustainable solutions, we need sustainable applications, and of course all of that at an affordable cost. So let's rethink what we can do. And actually, to create value also for our lubricants industry, there are two options you can play with, two big parts of variables, right? You can either think about, well, we keep the kind of ingredients and think about new applications, new industries, or we keep the applications and the industries, but we change the ingredients. So here, just a few thoughts, and these are things we as Shell are working on. I'm sure many others as well. There might be a lot of other solutions, ideas, and innovations out there. But you have things like gas to liquid, right, where you think about, okay, it is kind of ultimately the same kind of ingredient and product you have, but is very good for kind of different applications. You have a lot of around the EV portfolio. We heard a lot about it already. Immersion cooling. We live in a world which is digitalizing, means a lot of many more data centers. We need to find solutions for this. And one of them could be immersion cooling. There's a lot around animal health, around cosmetics, which is probably not something new as such, but where a lot of innovation is happening as well. And of course, then the other option is, as I said, you have still many applications we used to have decades, hundreds of years already, and they will continue. But there also we need to innovate and find new solutions. So what's about changing there the ingredients and just think a little different than the very old-fashioned products, let's say. So you have things like this whole biodegradable piece, which is also then partly driven by regulation, by the whole sustainability thought, etc. You have ester-based transformer fluids, which is also then for, say, the kind of a sustainable idea of the energy transition, of the electrification, etc. And of course, you have then something around, we heard already a bit about it, around the re-refined base oils or re-engineered process oils, which addresses the whole thing of circularity and sustainability we just heard. So let me just go on one piece a bit to go a bit more deeper on the RBO, so the re-refined base oils. And please bear with me, I'm one of these commercial marketing salespeople, non-technical background, so I might explain it now in a very, very easy way. But ultimately, I've been told when I heard the first time, what is RBO? It was, no, it's very easy. What you put in, you get out. Cool, great. Sounds like a great circularity option. So what's the idea behind? Indeed, it is not non-virgin oil, ultimately what you get. That's absolutely right. But it does perform efficiently. And with the right additives, then actually you can create it into a very good and valuable new lubricant that addresses all the things you need. So what's the idea behind it? We all know over time lubricants do lose their performance due to contamination, etc. So you have this waste oil, right? You collect it. If you just not add all different kind of waste oils together, but keep it a bit separate in terms of quality batches, you already have a bit of a direction where it could go afterwards. You re-refine it, which in very easy words means you remove all the dirt and contamination and extract the base oil, right? Because the base oil is still there. So you have it and you can reuse it, being as a base oil for new lubricants, or you reuse it as re-engineered process oils as a process oil. This is really something which I like a lot, the whole idea around RBO, because it addresses all the parts of this energy transition trilemma, right? So you have something around the supply chain, around the keeping the same product, right? So you don't need new resources, around the security of the product. So then you have something around the sustainability, because of course you have the circularity topic around it, adding to the circular economy, plus managing the waste oil part in a certain amount. And actually it's at an affordable cost from an innovation perspective as well as the product itself, right? So it's not around a completely, let's say, crazy new technology where you need millions of R&D, right? Because ultimately we're talking about the same product. Yes, you might need a bit more and a bit different additives here and there, but it's not something completely new. So this is really kind of an easy option to address this whole trilemma. So let me finish here. I think it's just one of the examples. As I said, there are many, and some we are addressing as a company. Many other ideas are in the room here, hopefully, and over time and over these days, you're going to get inspired by hopefully creating even more options how to solve these challenges we are facing here. And let me invite you to join us to find these solutions as an industry to indeed stay resilient in this energy trilemma. Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much, Petra, and thanks so much to all of our presenters today. So now we're going to get into the Q&A section of the panel. So if you didn't get a chance before, if you go to Slido and use the code LEX24, that'll take you into the questions. And we're going to try and take as many as we can in the remaining about half an hour that we've got. So we'll try and make it as quick fire as possible. We've already got a couple of questions that are in here, so we might as well get started immediately. So this is probably a question for Sander, which was kind of addressed in your talk. So here, it was really a discussion about, you talked about the gap between industry and government on how certain molecules are perceived, right? Whether it's their toxicity or long-term effects. So one of the questions that was submitted was, how do you envision that as an industry, we can actually start to close the gap between government perception of some of the molecules and how industry understands their effects?
Yes, thank you for the question. I think that it's all about teaming up as an industry. I think what is very important is that, and so for let's say for my tenure, a couple of months now in Lubrizol, what I do see is that Lubrizol is doing a lot in trying to talk to the regulators, Brussels, for example, to explain what are the chemistries and try to explain that some of these chemistries are not harmful. I know that some of my peers are doing the same, right? So I think we as additives companies, we're trying to bring out that efficacy. Sometimes I think we could maybe work together on that a little bit more than we do today. But I also would like to invite particularly the other industry partners that are playing in this area. I know that the oil marketers are playing a big role in this as well, and they're active in that, but also, for example, the OEMs could play maybe a larger role in this and join this advocacy and trying to explain why this is important for everyone, because at some point, if these chemistries are particularly being targeted and we do not have a longer term solution, we do have a problem in this industry continue to bring success and continue to drive actually sustainability, because lubricants are there to drive sustainability intrinsically already, right? This is part of our industry at heart. So I do think that we'll have to form a larger front and a bigger team to continue to explain that to the regulatory people. And I think that would be my point here. I think in the same time, what is also important, of course, is that you cannot just plan for success or bet on being successful with the policymakers and think that you can change all the specifications or regulations each and every time, right? So that means also in the same time we're investing a lot of money in alternative chemistries as well, and we continue to entertain that, of course, because we for sure want to remain in business, right, and remain to be successful, continue to be successful in this industry. So we're also looking at alternative chemistries, more sustainable chemistries. But I think that it's not always that easy, because if there's not a clear regulation and there's not a clear timeline always, it makes that it's difficult to anticipate where you exactly have to go. I think at the moment, for example, the antioxidant discussion that is going on with the regulators is a good example of that. So
interesting. Maybe a question directed to Matthew. One of the questions that come through here was, in terms of like the sustainable products, so whether that is kind of the EAL market, products that are formed from renewable base oils. Are you seeing growth in the sales of these kinds of products, and both in terms of push as well as pull from the market, or does it remain still relatively niche?
Great. Thanks for the question, whomever asked. I think, so the simple answer is, do we see growth? Yes. Is it big? It isn't. It isn't as big as we expected. If you were to look at any projection 10 years back, will it get better? Probably. What kind of challenges do we have to make it better? I think we have a dual challenge. There is a little bit of a technical challenge. Okay, so performance, and the additive company definitely can help on that front, because there are a certain number of limitations sometimes for certain applications. It can create complexity. The other part is definitely price. And so depending on the application you are going into with a sustainable solutions, if you are going to commodity type application, commodity type market with a sustainable play, then it might be difficult, and you will have to work on the price. So there's a bit of a chicken and eggs conversation. You need volume in order to optimize, but definitely it's kicking in. Is it big? It isn't big for the time being. Now, certain ranges of product have a bigger ability, technically speaking, to switch to a sustainable solution. So re-refined base oil, as Petra mentioned, where there are obvious applications where we could replace 150 neutral virgin base oil by an RRBO version of it, because ultimately that's the same thing. Now, if you were to say, well, let's have a look at a water miscible coolant for cutting and grinding and try to make it fully sustainable, whatever that would mean, by the way, it's another type of challenge, and we will have to use way more chemical molecules in order to compensate whatever can be created. If you look at sectors like wind, as an example, and you are saying about what is sustainability there, well, actually, does it really matter that the product used in the gearbox of a windmill is sustainable? I'm not entirely sure that's the biggest challenge. The biggest challenge is to ensure that the windmill is reliable, that there's no downtime, that it's easy to flush, that the performance is guaranteed, that you can extend lifetime of the product and in the gearbox, etc. So it really depends which sustainability criteria you're looking at. But from a pure raw material that we use that are giving a sustainable aspect to the product, I think so far it remains relatively niche when you compare to the scale of the market, both for industrial and it is for automotive, especially on-road and off-road applications like, agriculture, as an example.
Yeah, Robert, you want to add to that?
Just a very brief comment on that. So we did a project on re-refined base oil, and we are actually seeing, we did a voice of customer panel going out to the end users of the different industries. And there was actually surprisingly a very, very big interest in using re-refined base oil, and a lot of the people were asking for re-refined base oil. The problem that we saw with this voice of customer analysis is, first of all, they needed convincing that this re-refined base oil, there's a perception around bad quality, poor quality. At the end of the day, it's re-refined. Is it going to be as good as the virgin product? So there was that perception problem to overcome. So there was an investment cost, an R&D cost in terms of going to the client and actually doing some research and working with that client to show them that the product does work, it can perform as well, if not better, than the virgin-based product. And the other problem with the re-refined base oil that we found from this voice of customer analysis is, again, because it's re-refined, because it's coming from perceived dirty oil, they wanted a cost discount. So actually selling the re-refined product at the price of the virgin-based alternative was a challenge in that industry. But there was fundamentally interest and a market for that product to meet various scope, carbon emissions targets as part of a corporation. And the markets that we saw the biggest demand for was things like metalworking fluids, cutting fluids. It wasn't really in the automotive space.
Okay, that actually speaks to one of the other questions, which was for Petra, which was, obviously with Shell, you've got a portfolio of the kind of virgin base oils as well as the GTL products. So with re-refined base oils, are we seeing that as kind of I guess a complement to those technologies, or is it a replacement? What's your view on that?
No, indeed, I think it's absolutely a complement, right? So we don't have this one-fits-all solution, as you rightly said. Sustainability does mean something different for different applications, and the best technology to address these new needs, being sustainability, circularity, or new needs in terms of performance, need to be answered in different ways, right? So there are applications where one makes more sense than the other. And also addressing a bit to your question of, do we see this market growing? Yes, of course, but again, probably very different than we saw it in some areas where we thought, oh, here, RBO would be the perfect solution. But actually what we see now, probably not yet, I would say. But in others, it does work pretty well, and it's well received by the customers. So it's really around having a kind of mosaic of different technologies, different sustainable solutions, to fit and answer all these different new demands.
Okay, maybe a question for Philippe. We'll pivot a little bit now and sort of talk about some of the data that you put up about sort of us reaching a peak for internal combustion engine volume and starting to see that fall off with EVs. Now, maybe we'll adjust this question a little bit because prices are an impossible thing to predict, right? But maybe if we can generalize that question to, as we see changes in the sort of like the production volumes of engine oils, what do you see as being some of the major changes or disruptions to whether it's the base oil or the additive market that kind of come along with that transition?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question actually, and I think one of the challenge as an industry we're going to face with this transition is having a visibility on, I can call that almost when is the last spec going to happen, because I think there will be probably a turning point where, you know, there will be a huge market that we need to cater for, which will be all based actually on needs. It won't be, you know, the industry as we know it today at some stage, you know, will stop. You know. So I think, and it's actually an opportunity because that will force us to really focus, as you know, I said in my presentation about the end user needs and what actually people needs on the field rather than just focusing on the specs. So, but I think, you know, I probably can say that by the time we'll be reaching that point, I'll be retired. I've left this industry. And it comes down, I think, for the next generation to come, to get that visibility on what I can call the last specs. So I think it's more a problem for, you know, the next 3 decades rather than for now. You know, we are very confident that there's still a lot of opportunities in the market as it comes, you know, in the next 20 years, 40 years, 30 years, without necessarily having too much impact on, you know, how we do things today. The thing actually, can I just branch out a little bit on your questions? Because in terms of, on the theme of adapting and, you know, agility, so I think the greatest change I think we need to operate is, and touching on, you know, the question that Sanders addressed around legislation, is we just need to make sure we get the right molecules in the right place in the future, because everything I talk about around the change of, you know, the center of gravity of the world, and as well the change in demand, it's the key challenge for us is making sure we produce the right molecules in the right place for the future. And this has a huge implication as well around how we work as an industry to consolidate the, you know, the overall needs, because the thing in the scenario I've described, the last thing the industry needs is more capacity. So that transition around the right molecule in the right place for the right application is really, I think, the biggest challenge that we have in front of us.
Yeah, awesome.
If I can just add something to this, because I agree with what Philippe said, but just to add a view of product tied to this. So the ICE disruption, if electrification comes to a scenario where suddenly we have in 2050 no more ICE car produced, as an example, not in use but produced, well, the real impact for us on base oil parts will be for Group 3 base oil. And these Group 3 base oil are barely used in the industry sectors, but they might be using immersion cooling tomorrow. They might be using EV fluid. They are using EV fluid. So the question will be how the supply chain of this particular part of the portfolio will reshuffle. So will there be an increase of a liter of a Group 3 base oil in case the market of ICE? Yes, definitely there will. Will that be a problem? Not necessarily. The industrial market, which is 55% of the business, is not using Group 3, only marginally for specific neat oils application or whatever application we might have. So the devil is in the details as always, but yes, there will be disruption. Will that be a massive problem? I agree with Philippe. Not really. We just need to adapt, but the manufacturing of automotive products, industrial products are actually very different from a standpoint. On the additive side, slightly different, because an antioxidant is an antioxidant. You might use it in multiple applications. So I will not be that concerned by the IC transition. Whatever happens will happen. Supply chain wise, cost wise for the product, I think it's not going to be the biggest challenge, if you ask me.
Maybe a question for Chris here. So I'll just read out the question. So we all have an ambition to deliver value. The problem is that customers want high quality, high performing products at a cheap price. How can we effectively change this? Now, this is an internal challenge, right? That we're always going to have. I think one thing that I see in the field, which is particularly challenged for our industry, is that because often lubricants and fuels are kind of grouped together, we get seen as more of a commodity industry than a value industry. So maybe in answering the question, is there anything else beyond just customer education that we can be doing as an industry to help show the kind of value that we can deliver?
No, thanks, Raf, and thank you for whoever asked the question. So first of all, I think irrespective of what industry you work in, you could apply that question. Everybody wants the highest cost at the lowest price. I mean, that's just business. But I think the answer to that is twofold. The first one is, and I would like to actually expand on the point you referred to there, Raf, which is, what is the real value of a lubricant? You saw some of the data actually in Philippe's presentation earlier on. I think we're preaching to the converted around this room. Everybody here understands the value of lubricants. But a piece of equipment will not operate effectively without a lubricant. I mean, I was using a little two-stroke strimmer in my garden at the weekend. I didn't quite get my 50-to-1 ratio right. You get that metallic grinding noise. That piece of equipment will literally break down very, very quickly without the right lubricant. On top of that, we talked a little bit on this panel today about sustainability. The fact is that a lubricant can actually be carbon negative, because if you put a fuel economy lubricant in, you actually save more fuel than carbon is required to actually make the lubricant. There's so many areas which as an industry we can collectively work towards to educate the customer, educate the industry, educate the regulators about where the value is. I don't want to go into the regulation side, both Yannick and Sander talked about that earlier, but again, there are real elements there in terms of value creation, and in fact, if it's done the wrong way, in terms of cost input. And that actually is the other part I'd like to mention to answer this question. I think the value part of it, the selling part, is all about external customer education, but we owe it to ourselves to take every single dollar of unnecessary cost out of this industry. At the end of the day, we all need to make an appropriate margin to invest back in that innovation which will deliver what we're all looking for. But every dollar of cost that goes in that the customer doesn't value, again, Philippe spoke about some of those in his presentation, that's not money that we can recover. That's money that nobody recognises in the industry. So I would challenge us on a twofold axis. One is it's all about customer education, but the other part is collectively we need to work on taking every single dollar of unnecessary cost out.
Thank you. And then, Robert, I mean, you work with a lot of the end users. Do you see them with, do they have specific opinions about our industry, which you can see that are slowly changing?
Yeah, I think the industry is almost inherently moving to a more high-spec product anyway. I mean, just to give you an active working example of this, a colleague of mine recently bought a second-hand Tesla. This Tesla had done 60,000 miles and it had never been back to the workshop. You know, these electric vehicles, they don't go in for fluid changes. It's on the same transmission fluid, greases, all the rest of it than when it left the workshop, which is incredible, really, when you think about it. So the onus really is on, you know, these vehicles are going to last, they're going to meet their tolerances and their warranties and all the rest of it. You need to put in a very, very high-spec lubricant. And as I said in my presentation, the way these vehicles are going to be marketed is how far they can go on a charge or how the performance of it. And the lubricant plays a massive part in that. And I agree with the education point of view, we need to be educating the customers that, you know, this is the impact of having a poor quality lubricant or a good quality lubricant within the vehicle, and these are the stresses and strains that they go under. So we are seeing demand for sort of high quality lubricants and people willing to pay the price for that, but you've got to pick the right markets.
Okay, maybe a question for Sandra, because you talked a lot about the regulatory environment that we're in here in Europe. Maybe instead of maybe we'll rephrase this, rather than talking about driving good or versus bad innovation. Are there any examples of where, let's say, Europe has put in regulation which has led to really good outcomes for our industry? I think we all recognise some of the challenges, but are there any examples where it's driven for really good innovation that you can think of?
I would think in general, it's important to mention, right, in Europe, I think that the fact that there is regulation in place is a good thing, of course, right? And it helps us driving a lot of sustainability, and it helps us driving a lot of innovation. So I think one of the nice things in Europe is, of course, that we are at the forefront of innovation. We are at the forefront of being sustainable. We're acting in a pretty educated market. So I do think that we have to recognize that also, and I don't want to necessarily bash on regulation as such, right? So just to make that clear, I just think that in the same time then we need to make sure that the regulation is the correct one, so that we continue to invest in what is good or better innovation, right? And that can help us to be more sustainable. And I think that actually, if we talk for the lubricant industry and we look at all the additive packages, new products that have come to the market, not only Lubrizol, but the same is true, of course, for my peers, that we are in Europe all the time at the forefront of that innovation that is actually driven by regulation, right? Look at Euro 7 that I mentioned before, right? This is pushing Lubrizol to come out with a lot of new products to help our customers continue to be successful in the market, and help our customers to have the latest, greatest products that will actually enable them to respond to these new Euro 7 specifications. So I do think that many of these regulations that are in place are very good and help us to continue to be innovative. If that answers your question, Ralph.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And maybe one last quick fire question for Philippe. Just, you know, we've mentioned a few times today, you know, about attracting talent and keeping talent within the industry. Can you think of any good examples that you've seen across the industry which have been effective in bringing people into the industry?
Very. I think it's a big challenge, and Chris has really extensively mentioned, you know, the need for us to be portrayed as a very attractive industry, because, you know, we talked about it. I think we do things fantastic, you know, very good things for the world. My own experience, I think, you know, it comes down very to attract the talents and to, you know, to get people on board. It comes down to finding the right person, the right time, in the right place. Back to your point, luck. You know, for 80% of people, and I think, you know, I'm really proud of all the people we've onboarded in recent years, and who are really making a great contribution to organization, and I'm sure it's the same for Pierre's company here. But I don't think we have a systemic, very transparent and very well publicized channel outside to really attract the talent. There's been some effort done. You know, I was part of the ATC and the main committee a few years ago. There's been some effort done here to try to actually, make the industry a bit more sexy, if I can use that word. It hasn't been necessarily bring fruit. So I think now it's more, you know, us, you know, scouting as all, you know, industry for talent. I'm not going to start a bidding war with Sanders around attracting the best talent here, but so I think there's something we can think about as an industry to be more visible, more vocal around, you know, all the benefits we can bring to that world to really attract the talent. And as well, if I can just add a thought, you know, I think we've been an industry dominated by really, hiring the best engineers and the best chemists. But we need the talents in all departments, the best marketers, the best supply people. We talk about all these challenges around supply, the best people in manufacturing, and the best IT technologists, because, we need to go, data management is going to be really crucial in our industry in the future. So we need as well to attract probably in sector that we have not been necessarily tapping into too aggressively in the past.
And if I wouldn't mind for a final view from Petra, because you did mention you're from a slightly different demographic to the rest of the group. So have you seen anything that's been effective as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe just two things I always tell young people or talents being outside of our industry already, or already inside of the industry. One piece is for young people, the purpose is very important, right? So the purpose around this energy transition, around making the world a better place in whatever type of form, I always tell them, look, if you want to play a role there, then come to an energy company, right? Because that's the core part of the energy transition. So you need to help us to transition and make this happen. So if you really want to make a change, don't tell us from outside that we are doing wrong. Come in and do the change, right? So I think this is, from a purpose perspective, a very good EVP, employee value proposition to come. And what I, for example, see within our company, as you said, no, we're playing in different parts of the whole energy play. Lubricants is so attractive because actually we're playing in all the industries. We are playing in all the sectors, right? Being the most energy transition resilient ones, the very new ones, the very old-fashioned ones, let's say, everywhere. And we will remain there. As we said, it's metal on metal. You need the lubricant that it works, right? So just to make it very easy. So you have such a variance and not just focused on one specific sector. And I think that brings so much options where you can bring in ideas and innovation and need to find new solutions, that it is a very attractive case. And what I realized in the past months and years is there's a lot around walk the talk, right? Yes, we need to stand up, be more visible. We are just this one little euro in the range of many, right? So we are not the first that comes up to mind of somebody, but we have a good case. We just need to be proud of it and explain it, why it's the right place to be.
Thank you. That's a really good way to end this session. So just to be advised, we'll take a short 15-minute break here. And after that, in track one, we're actually going to be talking about scope 1 to 3 carbon reductions and getting a handle on the data and the processes. Over in track 2, it's future fuels for maritime energy and power generation. A lot of thanks to the audience. That was probably the longest session I think that we have for the 3 days. So really appreciate you and your active engagement. But also, could you please join me in thanking all of the speakers today? They did a fantastic job.
Thank you.